Hi everyone, today we're hanging out like it is 2000, and one of my favorite things about reading vintage press is seeing how strongly people reacted to things that today do not bother anyone at all. In my previous video, we talked about a moral panic caused by a perfume in the 1970s. Today we're looking at a fashion show that split Paris into two opposing camps. So what actually happened? During the week of high fashion, or haute couture, the legendary house of Christian Dior presented a collection inspired by the homeless population of Paris. Critics called the creative director of the house, John Galliano, distasteful and attention-seeking. Galliano called them bourgeois, smug, and condescending. Charming. Reading that in 2026, I was thinking, wow, so much drama. But let's look at the context. Haute couture existed for a long time as a personal service, making top-level garments for real clients. And couture shows were organized for these clients, existing ones and potential ones. It was a small audience, but for a long time, it was enough to keep houses in business. Then, by the end of the 20th century, that clientele became much smaller. Many houses built mainly around haute couture struggled or disappeared. Meanwhile, big fashion brands like Dior or Givenchy could survive because couture was not their only product. They also had ready-to-wear, perfume, cosmetics, accessories, the whole brand universe. By 2000, the question was no longer can couture make money directly, because mostly it couldn't. The question was what else can couture do for the whole brand? And in other words, why keep doing this at all? And one of the clearest answers came from Dior. The decision was made to keep making couture, even if couture itself was not bringing direct profit. Because now the couture show had a new job. It had to become an unforgettable media event that promotes the entire brand. So if almost nobody was going to buy these pieces anyway, why not let John Galliano's extraordinary imagination fly with no speed limit? Ungaro and Versace, for example, were doing something more celebrity friendly. Their couture could travel through red carpets and magazines. One way or another, the main question was no longer who is going to wear this. The question was who is going to remember this. And this is how we get from couture to perfume. Couture creates the unforgettable image, and perfumes let millions of people buy a little piece of this magical world. So let's talk about two perfumes released in 2000 that were way ahead of their time. And there is Kenzo flower in front of me. If you look at the note breakdown of this fragrance, you might expect something warm, flowery, maybe a little sweet. But it doesn't smell like any of that. It doesn't smell like any other perfume I know, and 26 years later, it still smells ultra modern. The symbolic flower of this perfume is the poppy, but we all know that poppies do not really smell. But I think that's the point. They wanted the poetic image of a flower growing in an urban environment. So choosing a flower with no obvious scent created intrigue rather than confusion. And when this bottle arrived recently, I was glad to discover that it smells exactly how I remember it from the 2000s. At least to my nose, nothing important has been lost. And honestly, there's no need to alter this one because it's such a timeless masterpiece. Another perfume from 2000 that was very unusual for its time is Givenchy Haute Couture. I used to wear this one in the 2000s, and the other day I went into the store to repurchase a bottle for my collection and for this video. But last moment I stopped myself because I realized that I wanted in the original bottle. But we'll talk about the marketing after we talk about the fragrance itself. You probably know that berries have been having their moment in perfumery lately across many brands. It has been one of the biggest trends of the last few years. Today we're so used to the fragrances smelling fruity, juicy, edible, dessert-like. But back in the 2000s, that was bold. It smelled like an overripe raspberry with a little bit of spice. No other perfume smelled quite like it. The name was perfect, Haute Couture. It is, of course, a play on words. This was couture with hit. And the original bottle represented that perfectly, a woman in a fancy haute couture gown. In my eyes, every part of this product made creative sense. So why would they replace it with this? I don't know. Now it looks like a Chanel special edition. And for Chanel, this kind of minimal presentation kind of makes sense. Coco Chanel was already very minimal compared to her contemporaries. But at which point was Givenchy minimalist? Did I miss something? So to me, this new bottle does not represent this perfume composition. It does not represent the name of it. It does not represent the original DNA of the house, and it clearly does not represent the spirit of the year it was released. 2000 was not sterile, that's for sure. So for my collection, I'm going to get a vintage bottle, but marketing drama aside, this is still a beautiful fragrance. Bold, mature, um, elegant raspberry, no vanilla, no powder, no marshmallow, no BS. Now, while we're on haute couture, I want to talk about something I keep hearing from other YouTubers and fashion fans. That haute couture means garments made 100% by hand with no sewing machines involved. My question is, if that's what it means, then what are all these sewing machines doing in haute couture ateliers? Today I'm sewing a simple silk and lace top in my workshop, by no means couture level, but it is enough to show the basic principle. In haute couture, hand sewing and machine sewing are not moral categories, they are tools. I'm going to use only two technical terms, and the first one is connective seams. Connective seams connect two separate pieces of the same garment. This seam is made on the wrong side of the fabric. You can only see the machine stitches if you turn the garment inside out. So connective seams can be sewn by machine today, including in haute couture. But there is another category of seams, and for the sake of simplicity, let's call them all top stitching. Technically, each of these stitches has its own name and purpose, but today we're being super generic. These are the stitches that appear on the right side of the garment, if they are done by machine. For example, here you can see the row of stitches I made on the right side to keep this seam allowance flat. And this is not a couture technique. Why? Does it look bad? On this fabric, not really. But now imagine fabrics that have traditionally been used in haute couture. Brocade, jacquard, tweed. Machine stitches can look very awkward on materials like that. They interrupt the beauty of the surface and give the garment this casual industrial look that doesn't make sense for this kind of design. For example, I hemmed this jacquard kimono by hand, so nothing appears on the right side. Just imagine a machine stitch running here, or here on this printed satin skirt. So, haute couture is not manual work for the sake of manual work. It is a choice of assorted techniques that give the most exquisite result for a specific design, a specific fabric, and a specific place in the garment. So, is it any wonder that couture costs a fortune? By the way, this top is loosely inspired by Samantha Jones's sleeve dress from one of the most iconic 2000 series, Sex and the City. And this scene is actually from the year 2000. I made these bows at the last moment out of my test run straps. I was trying to figure out how skinny I could possibly make them, so nothing got wasted. And as we are wrapping up, let's remember the early internet. In 2000, it was already becoming a mass phenomenon, but it was still expensive, chaotic, limited by traffic, and for many people, its purpose was not entirely clear. I remember my mom's aunt was visiting us around this time, and she didn't have kids of her own, so she asked me what the internet was. And I said, uh, well, that's a space that you can enter, hang out in, and once you start running out of traffic, you just should disconnect. And her reaction was, oh, okay. But years later, during a barbecue, my mom brought this story back, and her best friend started laughing and said, yeah, in 2000, the internet was really a space you could enter for a brief time and then come back to your real life. But now it's a space where you live and only occasionally come back from. And honestly, yes, 26 years ago, the internet was already there, but yeah, it had not swallowed the ordinary life yet. So I really feel like it's time to leave this space and have a piece of real life somewhere outside because it's summer. Um, Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.